Thursday afternoon at 1 o'clock, and of course we're coming to you live from the Smart Hub for today's HubLive. Now I have an exciting guest here today to talk about money. So money is the topic that we've been talking about for a couple of weeks, and we're going to continue talking about money today. Marnie said last week that money makes the world go round, so we'll know what David French, who is our guest today, has to say about money in a little while. How are you, David?
I'm very well, thanks, Elize.
Thank you so much for joining me at the Smart Hub.
It's a pleasure. It was just nice to get out of the office and walk down or ride down here on such a beautiful day.
Yeah, you came on your push bike, did you?
I did, yeah. I like just riding my push bike around because it just gives you some exercise that's not planned. You know, I have to get to work anyway or come to meetings or whatever, so I may as well jump on the pushy.
Oh, that's cool.
And everyone used to do it back when I was a kid, and you know, it's good for you.
It is good for you, and the weather's perfect for it at the moment.
It's really fun, yeah, it's nice.
It's awesome, definitely. Yeah, so we just had a long weekend. Did you do anything fun?
Well, fun. I was helping my son do up a 40-year-old car, so I've been working on that on the weekend. Hence, I haven't been able to get all the grease out from under my fingernails. I am well on the way for those that might see that.
Oh, that's cool. What kind of car is it?
It's a Land Cruiser, a 1978 Land Cruiser.
Oh.
And, so we've done all the steering, all the power steering, we've fixed all that up, and now and did the brakes on the weekend, and yeah, just a whole bunch of work to bring it up to, you know, a standard so it's a daily drive.
That's awesome. What a great little project. It's a
really,
nice hobby.
I mean, it can be frustrating, but there's a lot of it. You get a lot of pride out of it when you're finished.
Yeah, I can imagine. So last question about the car. What color is it?
It's sort of a beigey common, that 1970s Land Cruiser beige. I think back then you could have any colour you liked as long as it was beige, you know.
Oh my goodness, beige. I do like cream, but it's not a good colour for a car. No. So today we're going to talk about money. As you all know, these HubLive events is really about adding value and giving information, expert information about all the different elements that is required to run a business. So as a business owner, we have all these hats that we need to wear. We have to be an expert in every single thing in our business and kind of orchestrate everything to happen. And in the middle of that is money. And money really is like the blood of the business. It's the oxygen that keeps the business going. And David, you made a really, really interesting comment just before we went live. You said, business is numbers. Business is numbers. What does that mean?
Well, I think that's an important but perhaps heretical thing to say, because, you know, if you look at LinkedIn or Harvard Business Review and all these things, there's any number of articles that are always pushed at you about let's look after your staff and let's look after the clients and let's train and do all this stuff. But at the end of the day, no one's going to thank you if your business goes broke. You know, you might be the greatest boss or the greatest manager, or think you're the greatest manager, or, you know, do the best training or whatever. But at the end of the day, if your numbers don't stack up, you're nowhere. No one's going to thank you for that. So, and I think one of these things, my view is that much of this commentary creates a massive disservice to people that are trying to set up their businesses, because they concentrate on these soft things, if you like, rather than the hard data, which is the numbers. Now, that's not to say that those soft things don't have a place. In fact, you know, you have to look after your staff and you have to look after your clients. But that's not, you know, that's not a revelation. We know that.
Yeah, that's right.
The revelation is, if you don't measure it and you don't have your balance sheet right and your cash flow right and your bank accounts looking right, then, as I just said, you don't have a business. So maybe we should start thinking about that before we start thinking about all these other things. I mean, these other things, as I said, they're important. They're factors that contribute to the viability of your company. But if you're not keeping track of the viability and managing that directly, you're going to be in trouble.
Yeah, absolutely. And you would know, because you're from the Investment Collective and you've been in business for how many years?
It's coming up to 20 years.
Yeah,
I think, if I'm not mistaken, next year will be 20 years.
Wow, congratulations. That's a milestone.
It's been a long while. There's been a few lumps in that road, but we're still here, and we employ about 40 staff. We look after about $600 million for people in all sorts of types of people. We help with small business advice and bookkeeping, all sorts of things like that.
Yeah. I didn't realise do you have bookkeeping services?
Absolutely, we do. Part of the growth part of our business is helping people run their businesses. So that can be providing mentoring services, helping with business plans, or something as mundane as bookkeeping. But that's the thing, mundane it might be, but if you don't keep your eye on your books, and no one's got an excuse these days with the quality of bookkeeping software that's out there. If you've got a competent bookkeeper to help you, you've really got a good handle on your business. And I'm dismayed at the number of people that just don't pay enough attention to that, if any.
Well, it's interesting because money really, the numbers, which refers back to money in a way. So money really is the scorecard of business, and we wouldn't play a game and not look at the scoreboard. No, but we play business and not look at the numbers.
That's a really funny thing. If you went to, what's a football match without the scoreboard?
Yeah, and go, high five. That was so much fun. I have no idea whether we're winning or losing.
That's a great analogy.
Yeah. So you mentioned this very specific word while we were speaking before, and that word is discipline. Now, I know that people like me do not love that word. I don't know many people who love the word discipline, but it really is the foundation for achieving a good outcome, isn't it?
It is, and discipline's not necessarily a bad word. I mean, if you go and do a traditional university course, it's probably in a discipline. It might be a discipline of economics, or it might be medicine or law or IT, but it's it's a formal set of knowledge or instructions, and that's we call that a discipline. Well, it's called a discipline because you have to go through and you've got to learn it. So discipline's not a word to be ashamed of or afraid of, but in my experience, most people that run businesses are not disciplined.
Yeah, that's right.
They want to do what they went to primary school. It's managing yourself and taking note and acting upon data and things that you see that are important to your business, and making sure you actually do that.
I love that. Okay, so what I'd like to ask now is, what is it exactly that we need to do when we say we need to be disciplined? What are the activities that we need to be disciplined in doing? And secondly, can you give us an example maybe of a business or businesses that you've seen that have been undisciplined and what the outcome is?
So, it's interesting that it's twigged my imagination with your pushback or reticence on the word discipline.
Yeah.
And like viewers, I suppose, I think that's what Dame Ennis says, isn't it? Viewers. Anyway, or Paul Hogan, but the viewers or the people watching, don't get it in your head that this is I'm encouraging people to take a real interest in their business, and over and above the things that probably got you into business in the first place, which are the exciting building the product and all that. Now, one of the things that, and not all of these things, we don't, even I don't like all of these things, but funnily enough, if you do them enough and you start getting good at them, you do like them. So one of the things that comes to mind is reading contracts. So pretty much any business will end up getting involved in some contracts. I mean, that could be a lease for a property to run your business from, or it could be a software contract, or it could be all sorts of things. Well, we all take these contracts many of us take these contracts for granted and just sign stuff. Well, in business you can't do that. I mean, you've got to get really interested in whatever someone puts on your desk, because you're being bound to it. Well, I can give you an example of a hospitality business that we're involved with up until recently, where they bought a hotel. These people bought a hotel and didn't read the contract. They leased it. They bought the business and leased the building. Anyway, they didn't read the contract, or let alone get legal advice for the contract. regarding the lease of the building.
That's scary.
And what it did, the first thing I did is, well, where's your lease? When they came to me, look, our business is in trouble, we need help, where's your lease? So I said, where's your lease? And they said, well, they gave it to me, and I read about 3 pages in, it said, you're going to be responsible for all the maintenance of not just the day-to-day maintenance. There were big things that were already wrong.
Yeah.
And the lease in black and white said, you're responsible for fixing up these things.
Oh.
Now that meant that their sewerage system wasn't able to be expanded.
Oh.
And that meant that they couldn't put extra units in.
Oh.
And because they couldn't put extra units in or upgrade their existing units, they were excluded from getting Queensland government contracts, which were available.
Oh, no way.
So that was, like whenever a business is in trouble, excuse me, whenever a business is in trouble, you look what you can fix immediately, and you look for the levers that you might be able to pull to help get you out of the mire. Well, that was a big lever. If we could have got some contracts for people to come and stay there, and in the past, people had stayed there.
Yeah.
But because they weren't able to upgrade, they were excluded because the rules changed. And they just weren't able to do it. So that was a big lever. It should have been a gift, wasn't available because these people hadn't read the contract or hadn't had a lawyer review it.
Yeah.
Well, what do? Then that means that we're fighting the battle with one hand behind our back.
Yeah.
And it could have been all avoided.
Yeah.
So that's one aspect of discipline, reading things and reading them carefully and understanding how to read contracts, which is a special skill. It's not like reading a novel.
No.
Those sorts of documents are working documents. You've got to get to a word that's in bold or in capitals, and that will refer you then back to the glossary of terms. So you've got to move around these documents, not just read it, because I promise you now, if you read it like a novel, you'll get to about the 3rd page and you'll be asleep. But the way to avoid that is to read it like a working document, and you're jumping around and understanding what the definitions are and all that, and that way you'll end up that practice will end up making you actually good at contracts.
Yeah. Chris, Caitlin, thank you very much for joining us on HubLive today. We're talking about money. It's our 3rd week in talking about money, and really the lifeblood, oxygen and scorecard of business. I'm here with David French, and we're talking about the importance of applying the right disciplines to your business as a business owner. And one of the first examples that you've mentioned is reading contracts and maybe even seeking legal advice, and not under any circumstances just signing something that's come up on your desk. It's
too easy to sign things, isn't it? I mean, first of all, we don't like it. We see a contract there, it's thick, it's probably boring. Yeah. I mean, you do have to be a special type of person to be a corporate lawyer. You really do.
It's true.
But anyway, like who wants to really do that? But and every day we sign things. I mean, you go and rent a car. I mean, who goes and reads all that stuff behind a rental car? You just sign it because you expect it to be pretty much standard. But where it comes to your business, these things are often not pretty much standard.
Yeah.
Especially if you're doing a deal to buy something or get involved with a software company or a lease or some sort of agreement to provide services, you've got to be very, very careful. Another area where discipline is required is building business models or budgets. And we did a session that talked about budgeting with
November?
With the Smart Hub in November, wasn't it?
Yeah. Can I encourage everyone, if you missed that session, go back to the videos that are saved on the Smart Hub page. November, David did a magnificent lunch and learn about budgets. Sorry to interrupt
people, again, people say, oh, budgets, and they think that they're in grade 7. They think they're, at school, and it's make my budget for my lunch money or something. Well, the budget is just a story of what you're going to do for the next 12 months or several years, whatever it is, whatever time period you choose. It's just a story told in numbers. Now,
but how do people go? Because I know that what a lot of people say around writing that story is, I don't know what's going to happen in, July. I don't know. So what do you say to those people?
Well, the first thing is to have a guess.
Yes.
So you sit down and you must have a narrative in your mind about what you want to achieve.
Yeah.
So you've got to convert that narrative to numbers.
Yeah.
You know, so you know maybe see people say, I think I'll try and get 5 customers by July.
Yeah.
You know, and that's great. But what does that actually mean? And then we need to think, okay, well, what resources do I need to get that? If I'm going to get 5 customers, what resources do I need? What resources do I need to invest to get those 5 customers? How many times do I get on the plane? How many hours of programming do I have to do? You know, what is it? You know, how am I going to support myself between now and then? And then when I've got the 5 customers on, how do I service them? And these are all questions that people need to be careful about. And I've always found that, well, a tool that I use regularly is a big sheet of A3 paper, you know.
So actual paper?
Actual paper.
Not spreadsheets,
no.
and actual paper, yes.
If you don't know what to, so many times in my life, if I haven't known what to do or where to go next, I mean, with all my skills, I still do this, right?
Yeah.
I have a graph pad. Well, because I'm a boy, right? I'm not that neat, so I like the line. I like the lines in the graph pad, right?
Yeah.
So rather than just art paper, I use a graph pad. But you can get big A3 graph pads, and then you can start jotting down things, and you can start drawing. This leads to this, and if you've forgotten something, there's plenty of room on the A3 page just to jot down some notes. And then once you've got that down there, then you can turn it over and then do a neat one.
Nice.
You know,
yes.
And that starts for me, and you know, lots of people have their own techniques for this, but for me, that consolidates my thoughts. Well, once your thoughts are consolidated enough, then you can convert them to numbers. So, okay, I'm going to get 5 extra clients on board by July. I think I can't do all my programming and visit all these clients and help roll out my new software, if that's what you're doing, to all these clients without some staff, without a staff member. Okay, so a staff member is $60,000 for that level we need. So okay, that 60 goes in the thing. So 5 clients. Okay, so then how much do I have to charge these 5 clients to pay that 60,000 plus pay something for myself?
Yeah.
So you know, this is the logic and the discipline that you go through, and when you start it makes your head hurt.
Yeah.
But once you do it, it's you know, like I said, once you read 10 contracts and you start understanding how they work, they become much less intimidating, and eventually you'll be able to start drafting your own.
Yeah.
Same thing with budgets. Do it a few times and do it in that process that I've just talked about, or something that works for you. It won't be intimidating at all. You'll end up liking it and looking forward to it.
And it doesn't matter that you don't get it quite right the first time. What matters is that you start the process and keep going until you work on doing it right. That's
correct. And when we talk about doing it right, what we're actually talking about is applying discipline to yourself. So this isn't about dreaming. Yeah. This is about trying to create a reality for yourself.
Yeah.
So I remember when I was a kid, and I wasn't a kid actually, I left school, and you know, I thought I would do a budget for myself, because I wanted to buy a car, I think it was. So I wrote this out, but it was Dreamboat, because I just, you know, I just come home on the weekend and spent all the money hooping it up with my mates. Well, that was just stupid. Like, that wasn't anything. So what we're doing is we're talking about building a plan for the next foreseeable time, and we're going to put numbers to it, and we're going to run to that plan. And if you don't, we're going to work to that plan, and if the plan's not working, we'll be able to see by how much and why. Like, what went wrong? Oh, I didn't get 5 customers, I only got 3. Yeah. Or I got 5, but they're only little. Yeah. You know, like, and that teaches you, so that 5 years down the track, that knowledge base starts building up and becomes one of the most valuable things you'll have.
And I think that discipline, and I want to make a comment about that word in a second, but I think that discipline of, here's where I want to be, here's where I thought I would be, here's where I am, what's the gap, and what do I need to do next? That kind of thinking, if you just have that very simple thinking in your mind, you can fix anything.
Absolutely.
But if you don't have that thinking, you feel lost and overwhelmed and scared or frozen or aggressive, depending on what kind of person you are.
Well, I think the scared thing is interesting. That's very interesting, because, you know, anyone that's serious in business hasn't had a time when they've been a bit scared. Yeah. You know, in fact, I quite often joke to people, well, the reason you're in trouble is you're not scared enough.
Yes.
You know, like, you can't be just putting on rose-coloured glasses. Like, business isn't an easy task. True. And so And these tools, right, the budgeting, the ability to read contracts, the discipline, they're all tools that are going to allow you to avoid being in trouble in the first place, or get out of it quickly if it looks like it's on the horizon.
I want to say a couple of things. I heard a really interesting little saying the other day, and in fact, I was telling my 12-year-old about this saying, and it goes like this. If you live life the hard way, life is easy. Or if you live life the easy way, life is hard. And I think that's exactly right, and it boils down back to discipline. If you do the right things every single day, overall your life is easy. If you do only what you feel like doing today, life is really, really tricky. And so discipline is really doing what has to be done regardless of how you feel.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And it's interesting you talk about that, because one of the things we do is we manage investment portfolios for people.
Yeah.
And there's any number of people out there with investment portfolios, sometimes quite large, and they can be stretching back for years.
Yeah.
And they'll come into us with a shoebox full of stuff.
Yes.
Well, the very first thing we do is load it all up into an Excel spreadsheet, right back to first principles, right back sometimes to the 1970s of data that's been built. And if you're familiar with shares, sometimes companies break up. There'll be a share split, or a company might sell part of it, Dulux, which is just getting taken over now, used to be owned by Orica, which was in turn ICI Australia, right?
Yeah.
And so there's a story in the share market behind that is detailed in the different splits.
Yeah.
So a $10 share might become two $5 shares, all stuff like that, right?
Yeah.
Well, so many people just don't bother with it. They'll come in, they say, I've got a new client, I'm not going to bother, what is something that happened in 1970 matter to me? Or probably more to the fact 85, which is when capital gains tax came in.
Yeah.
What does that matter to me? Well, it matters a lot, because sometime down the track, these people are going to want to sell those shares. And when that happens, if you just go and say, oh, that's a great idea, yeah, I really hate the stock now, sell it. Well, what about the capital gain that stretches back all the way back to 1985?
Yeah.
If you're any sort of responsible advisor, and according to the law, you better go and do your homework. So it means you're going to do it anyway. So how can you give the client a quick answer, or an informed quick answer, unless you've done the work? So isn't it better to do it when the client first comes in, and make sure you've got everything lined up, so that all your ducks are lined up, so that the day they do call, or something happens, someone they need a new car, or a daughter gets married and they want to fund an expensive wedding or something. Isn't it better that as the advisor we have all that sorted out in the beginning?
Yeah.
And then it's an easy discussion. It's like, okay, well, I'll have a quick look at that. I'll get back to you in 10 minutes.
Trish, Peter, thank you so much for joining us. I think the discussion is going into a very, very interesting topic. Of course, we're talking about money, which is the lifeblood of business. We're talking about business's numbers, and we're talking about discipline, doing a set of rules and knowing what to do and doing it at the time that it needs to be done. Now, this is what you're saying, really. One of the other disciplines, other than reading contracts, which is very important, is setting up systems, bookkeeping systems, other systems to keep track of the data that you're collecting over time. Now, that's not always the funnest thing to do, but the flip side of that is if you don't do it, you can end up in trouble, not knowing whether you're good, you're not good, whether you've lost anything, whether you are about to lose anything, and then you have to go back and track back and look at that story. So what advice can you give us? What if you're starting out now and you want to set things up right? What should you do? And what if you have started out a long time ago and you haven't set things up right? What should we do?
Well, this is very interesting. This is like life, isn't it? If I have been a bad person all my life, I don't think I have been, but if I had, right, and I decided that I wanted my life to be better, wouldn't I just start now?
Yes.
I wouldn't say I'm going to start in a week. I'd just start now. So if you've been running your business and sort of winging it, and finding that every other day there's some sort of crisis, maybe the lesson in that, or the message in that, is you better get serious, get a bit disciplined about how you're keeping your data.
And start today.
Yeah. And and there's no reason you can't work back and recreate that for 12 months. I mean, 12 months data for most purposes in a small business is probably sufficient to to give you some understanding, and then be really disciplined about how it builds up. But over 5 years, you'll be amazed at just what information is contained in that data. And you can set it up. And this is another thing about budgeting and the budgeting and what I generally call the respect for data. You've got to create this up. You've got to create it in a way that you understand. So we did some work we've done some work for cattle properties and farms. And one of the things there is on one take of it, it's the farm does this or the farm does that. But farmers don't think like that. They think in blocks. Like they've got one of them was the Suzuki block, or because a Suzuki got burnt out there, or it's the far block because it's the furthest one away,
or the fig tree block,
or the river block, or something, right?
Yeah.
Well, that means something to them.
Yeah.
That means something to them. So in your business, what you have to do is create your budget in a way that means something to you.
Yeah.
And this is one of the problems with I think if you go to a consultant or a bookkeeper, you've got to go with a clear idea in your own mind. You can't outsource that, and that's one of the things we see all the time. We get involved with a business that's in trouble, and they say, "I've got an accountant. The accountant, didn't tell me," or whatever. It's not the accountant's responsibility in the first place. The accountant's or the bookkeeper's responsibility is to tell you what's going on, but it's not their responsibility to tell you what your business should look like. And unless you go and ask them specifically for business advice. But I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the day-to-day management of your cash flow and building budgets and all that. You need to be able to understand your business well enough so that you can start putting descriptors in there and cost heads and revenue lines that actually mean something, that means something to you. And once you get into that, once you get into that mindset, you'll realise that this isn't a draconian task. This is actually a fun task. It's a task of interpretation. More than it's interpretation that's integral to how you run your business, not some requirement that someone's just thrown on you and you must do it.
Yeah. So the discipline so far is read your contracts, set up a budget in whatever form that works for you, and do your bookkeeping so that you're reporting what's happening in real time.
Absolutely.
And
be involved. Be involved with the bookkeeping. Understand. Just don't wait till someone gives you a report, or if they give you a report, at least read it, and read it in the context of your budget. Like, what's the budget saying? What did I think was going to happen, and what actually happened?
Yeah.
And then go through it. Where was I out? Where were my expectations not met, or where were they exceeded?
Yeah. Wendy, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you so much for hopping onto our HubLive. Please ask questions. We're here with David French. He's an expert in money, investing, and all things numbers. So please feel free, hop on, ask a question, and we'll get David to answer your questions. So discipline, anything else that we need to be disciplined at or have a discipline in business?
It's a good word because it goes everywhere, doesn't it?
Yeah.
I think, another thing that we just mentioned before we got started was understanding how does your business make money?
Yes.
And one of the problems that I see over and over again with people in business is that they forget that you've got to sleep and you've got to have some time for yourself and probably some time for your family. So it's not realistic to think that if you're producing, some particular item or selling hours, for example, which is a particular item, they're blocks, whether it's whether it's a bicycle or it's an hour, it's still a block of something. It's still a defined thing. You can't just be yourself. By yourself, you just can't be doing that forever. And even if you could, you can still only do it 24 hours a day.
True.
So you need to find ways to be able to scale in your business. And I hate that word because you go to management thing, everyone's talked about scaling, let's scale. But I don't really think people understand what that means. What it means, what they're really talking about is one of two things. Either economies of scale or capacity utilization. And economies of scale is when you've got a fixed cost that you can sell more against. So it's still only costing you the same to produce lots and lots more, which means that the unit cost is dropping. Well, that's
so give us an example. So give us an example of what that means.
Let me think about that. An example of what that means. Well, if you can build, I'll give you an example. Sorry, you threw me there. I'll get back to that. So an example of what that means. Many times when let's say you've got to use a third party for some of the software that you're using in your business.
Yes.
Many times these places will charge per user.
Yes.
Well, that's not scalable.
Yes.
Because every time you bring on a new user, you're going to have to pay another license fee. What you want is to get away from that so that you're paying a flat fee, or at least a fee that doesn't increase one for one with the number of staff.
And then if you were to on-sell that platform, if you had 10 customers, let's say the platform costs $100, 10 customers would
Well, if you built this platform yourself...
And you own it.
And you own it, that's right. And you didn't have to, which was exactly what we've done at work.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter how many customers you get on board.
Yeah.
Because that's what we did. I mean, one of the features of our business, I started outsourcing the software that we use to manage all these hundreds of millions of dollars for people. I started outsourcing that, and it wasn't very long before I realised that I could hire a programmer.
Yes.
And because I knew something about that field, I was able to, we set up a project and hired a programmer and built our portfolio management thing from the first keystroke.
Wow.
And it's a thing of beauty, it really is.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm really, really proud of it. And that's where the majority of our profits generated, because each new client that we come on, we're not paying a third party to service that, to load that software up.
But that's really a great example, isn't it? Because that's a fixed cost.
It's a fixed cost.
And every time you sell it, it's just profit.
Yes, that's right. And clients don't know that because, well, it doesn't matter to them.
No, but the value is in...
But every business that's doing what we do must have some sort of portfolio management system. You can't do what we do without it.
Yeah.
So your choice is to outsource it. Mostly if you outsource it, the costs will escalate as your funds under management or your client base increases. And that means that you're giving away a whole heap of your effort is going externally.
Yeah.
So, I think that's a really good example. The other one that I was going to say, the other thing is capacity utilization, where you've got a fixed thing and it's not full.
Yes.
So, to what extent have you bought something bigger than what really required, but you can funnel more through it? Well, that means the incremental cost of another customer is zero.
Yes.
Because it's already implicit in you, in what you're paying for.
Yeah. And both of those examples are just examples of astute business. That's what you do if you're good at business, if you take it seriously and you apply the discipline to thinking about how to really utilize your resources and maximize your profit. And
you're looking for things, so and this gets down to the budgeting. See, you might not be able to do these things if it's just you.
Yes, true.
But 5 years down the track, when you're a bit bigger, you may well be able to do those things. So you should start planning for that now.
Yeah.
You should say, well, if I really want to make this fly, I need to get to a point down the track where I actually own this.
Yeah.
And then I can get the economies of scale or the capacity utilization advantages of whatever it is. Yeah. I can capture them for myself.
Yeah.
And maybe that's the short or medium term objective of the business. Yeah. That's where maybe that's the first step that you've got to get to before it starts becoming a real business rather than just all personal effort.
Yeah, true. Dimitri, thank you so very much for joining us for our HubLive today. I'm here with David French and we're talking all things money. So David, do you have any other really, really good tidbits of tips or information around money in business, or how to manage money?
You need to be prepared for things before they happen.
Yeah.
So, if you've got your budget set up and your business plan set up, and if you've been paying careful attention to your accounts and bookkeeping, and if you've been looking for capacity utilization or economies of scale advantages in the business, then if something goes right or goes wrong, you'll be able to adapt to it well ahead of time. Now, something that falls into that category is your banking or financing arrangements. You know, like the bank's not going to give you money when you need it, I can tell you. And if they do, it's going to take months and months. You know, we've just revamped our banking at work because we're expanding and we want to do some things. Well, the bank approved it in November, and it's still not finalised. No. And where are we now? May.
Yeah.
So that's 6 months, and that's with a really good banking relationship. Now,
and a solid track record.
And a solid track record, and a business that we've got all the data and it's
that's
going
working.
Well.
Yeah.
So imagine if
you're
in trouble, and you need to do that.
Yeah.
Then you haven't got 6 months.
No.
So like first of all, we're not in trouble, and we've got all that track record and all that.
Yeah. And still it's taking so long.
It still takes a lot of time. So it's a minor annoyance. But if the success of the business depended on it, and it was a short-term thing where the business is really under pressure, that's not going to help you one bit. Yeah. So getting your banking in, getting these things lined up, going to the bank or whoever your financiers might be. I mean, maybe it's equity or whatever. Getting that done before you actually need the money. Is a really smart thing to do. And again, it's people say, I don't want to do that. It's not about meeting it's not meeting people, and it's not getting new customers in and all that. But unless you devote some time to it, you're going to be hamstrung in your ability to A, fend off problems, or B, grow.
Yeah.
So again, it's that discipline of putting some time aside. And I see this in all sorts of things. I mean, I've recently been involved with a movement in the medical industry which is about doctors. We were at work. We were confronted with a terrible tragedy that involved a medical specialist, and that got us a bit interested in some things around doctors' health. And so I went to a little conference on that. And people were saying, well, I don't have the time. I don't have the time. They were essentially saying, I don't have the time to look after myself. Well, I think the onus is on you, and I get that. I mean, I haven't got time to sit around and twiddle my thumbs either. So I get that, and I understand the disciplines of the medical field, and there's many other fields that have got these things that have to be done.
And lots of business owners feel the same.
Lots of business owners feel exactly the same, but it's no excuse not to say, I really need to spend some time, invest some time, which is the proper word. I need to invest some time in my own well-being, or I need to invest some time in my banking relationship, or I need to invest some time in looking for some business partners. These aren't wish lists or wannabe things. These are things that are fundamental to your own welfare and the welfare of the business, and they won't happen unless you deliberately put time aside to make it happen. I mean, one of the things in a growing business like ours is time to manage. Who likes having difficult discussions with staff? No one really likes that, or few people really like that. But if you don't have them, you're just going to be creating the same old thing day in, day out, and you're going to be running harder and harder, propping up the people that are holding you back. And some of those people might actually be pretty good underlying people, but then they just need a bit of guidance.
Yeah.
Well, whose fault's that if they don't get it?
Yeah.
If you don't put the time aside to actually go and manage and get involved, then you've really only got yourself to blame. And it's the same. It's the reason I gave that medical example a second ago is that that it's a human characteristic to want to focus on what's immediate and in front of us.
Yeah.
But it's actually a bit lazy.
Yes.
It's very easy to get stuff fed to you and to react, or to just say, I'm doing this because that's the core thing, that's the focus. But if you're not investing time in these things that appear to be in the grey periphery, then you're going to do yourself a disservice.
I think that's a beautiful way to end our discussion today. So really, let me just check my understanding of what you're saying. To make money in business, you need to obviously have a business and be disciplined with that. to be able to be disciplined is about setting aside time in your week to do the things that matter, not the things that are screaming, like the urgent things every single day, but to have enough time in your week to also look after the things that matter. And fundamental to that is looking after your own self, your own well-being as the business owner, your own health, looking after the management of your business, managing your staff, and then also being sure that you've got all of the issues around money sorted. So you have spoken to your bank manager, you've got the capital arranged way ahead of time, you have your bookkeeping set up, you have your budget sorted. So doing the things that really are important, but probably never super urgent where it's a huge issue right now. Because if it comes to that, then it's almost too late.
It's 100% right. I mean, you know, another little example of that is, you know, I said it in the beginning, I've been working on this car. You know, it's in some cases, it's pretty easy to whip through the nuts and bolts and get everything done up, right? But all those nuts and bolts have a torque spec. Like the amount that they're supposed to be tightened up is specified in a service manual.
Yeah.
So someone has gone to the trouble to say, this is how tight it should be.
Yes.
Now, if it comes loose on you, and
it's
because you didn't use the torque wrench, that's going to be a problem. Now, whose fault's that?
Yeah.
Someone told you already, it's in the book. So I would have thought that it was probably worth your while. How much extra is it to pull out the torque wrench and to apply that? 30 seconds? And that's the same as this data problem that we were talking about before. You might be able to whip through and do some quick and dirty numbers and give someone an answer. But maybe you can get a really good answer and give yourself much firmer foundation if you spend an extra half an hour or an hour or whatever it is in building up the data set so that it's actually a really tight data set that you can rely on.
Yeah.
So it's, you know, it is what you just said is right, Elize. It's really about investing some time. Choosing to invest that time rather than doing what's expedient, doing what is actually required to make a robust business that can benefit from the good things and withstand the shocks.
Yeah, you made some amazing points today, David. I really appreciate you coming into the Smart Hub. Thank you very much. It's your second visit. You can see the previous video, our lunch and learn that David did last year. Definitely worth watching. Just find that on our videos that were saved. And also today, very, very valuable. Thank you so much, David. Really appreciate it. The Investment Collective. Is there anything that you'd like to say just before we say goodbye?
No, just thanks for having me. I mean, it's an enjoyable and I think a useful discussion because no one ever told me.
Yeah, excellent. And it's almost like the manual. The torque wrench example was perfect. So the manual, David said, you've been told today, if you have some things to get sorted in your business, take today as the sign that do it this afternoon, do it now, and start today and keep up the disciplines in business. We look forward to seeing you next Monday on HubLive. See you then. Done. Thank you, that was excellent. Thank you so much.
Yeah, that was easier than I thought actually once we got going.